All right, so let's begin with the most important concept in cybersecurity. We call it as SOC. The full form is Security Operation Center. All right, so what is SOC? SOC is a centralized unit of managing your security posture. Okay, it's a centralized place where multiple security engineers, or especially we call it as SOC analyst, sits together and keep an eye on every security alerts getting popped up in the network, right? And their job is to make sure the overall security posture, overall security behavior of the network is under control. Okay, the focus is to detect, the focus of SOC team or SOC infrastructure, it is to detect any threats, any threats targeting to your network assets. It can be targeting to your web servers, it can be targeting to your computers, machine, router, switches, firewall, anything. Okay, and also to prevent means you stop them from coming inside the network. And even if it occurred, your job is to make sure you respond to them. Your job is to eradicate that malware. I hope you got the difference between detection, prevention, and response. Okay, one more time. Detection is all about discovering the alert. Prevention is stopping that from getting inside the network, like your antivirus solution, right? There's not much the engineers usually do, SOC analysts usually do. It is all done by the machine itself when it comes to prevention. But when it comes to response, this has to be done by the SOC analyst, because they have to eradicate the malware from the network or attack from the network as soon as possible to bring down your security posture under control. Next, real time monitoring. You have to if you can't monitor something, you can't detect something. If you can't detect something, you won't be able to respond to those threats, right? So you have to continuously monitor to the threats or maybe your network. Now let's talk about the core function of SOC. The first is threat detection. You have to detect the threats in the network in real time using different tools. There are different tools like SIEM, which is security incident and event management tool, like from vendors like Splunk, Microsoft Sentinel or Azure Sentinel. There is a product from IBM QRadar, many more. Okay, then we have incident response. So even if you have everything in place, you have all the security tools in place, even if some attacker was successful enough in getting into your network, your job is to respond to those attacks and eradicate the malware or threat from the network, right? Mitigate the security threats as quickly as possible. Next, monitoring. You have to continuously monitor your system. And this is where you have to make sure if you have deployed tools like SIM, or maybe we'll talk about that later, but if you have tools like EDR, web security tools, endpoint security tools, if all of them are doing their job properly or not. So that's also your job to make sure they are working properly. Okay. Next, threat hunting. So this is done by the advanced team in SOC. Their job is to proactively search for any hidden threats. Why? Because sometimes if you work on reactive basis, that the you get a threat, then you start investigating the alerts and everything, it might be late for you. Sometime you won't be able to detect the threats on time, and when you detect, it's already too late. So that's why threat hunting is done, which is with an impression, which is based on assumption that your network is already compromised, and then you start hunting for the threats, right? Let's talk about some of the major components in the SOC. So the first and very important component is people itself. There are different teams in the SOC. We call it as SOC level 1, then we have level 2 and level 3. Level 1 are the one who do the primary diagnosis. They are work into the threat management. They are predominantly involved in looking at the tools like SIMS tool or EDR tool. Okay, SIM is where it collects all the events into this tool from routers, switches, firewall, and everything. EDR keep an eye on all the endpoints, all your Windows machine, your Linux machine, and if those machine get compromised, you have an ability on the EDR, endpoint detection and response, to mitigate those alerts. Level 2 are advanced team. But if level 1 finds that this seems to be a very relevant, this seems to be a very problematic incident, they create an incident and assign that to the level 2 team. And level 2 team, their job is to perform the incident response. Their job is to make sure the malware get eradicated from the network as soon as possible, to bring down the network security posture under control. Finally, the level 3 is involved into the threat hunting. If you remember, I told you earlier, they are the one who do the proactive threat hunting with an impression, with an assumption that the network is already compromised. Okay. Next, we have processes. Now, processes are very important. The one of the very important process is called incident response process. In this process, we have multiple steps. We have detection. First, of course, we have preparation, and this process are defined by many security bodies like NIST or SANS body. Okay, they define how what you should do if your network get compromised or if you have any threats. So you start with the threat, then you have containment, where if you a machine get compromised into the network, you isolate them from the networks, right? So that it won't, the threat won't spread from this machine to rest of the network. Then you have eradication phase, where you make sure the malware get eradicated from the network. Then you have few more steps where you perform the recovery. If you format the machine, erase the malware, anything, so you make sure you once it is clean, you take back the machine into the network. Okay. And finally, reporting. Okay, so this is the entire process, which is very important. We call it as incident response process. This can organization may follow this process either from NIST or from the SANS. More or less, these are both the process are same. Okay. Technologies, of course, technologies are very important. I told you about SIEM solution, which is very very important. Then we have EDR tool, which is for endpoint detection. We also have IPS and IDS tool. IPS is all about detection of threat, and IPS is all about detecting and preventing it from happening. You may wonder, if we have IPS, why can't why don't we need IDS then, if IDS can detect and prevent it as well? Well, you see, IPS is all about believing that your software, I mean, IPS is where you rely completely on your antivirus solution, okay, or your software itself. Whereas IDS, you actually just help in detecting, and then it creates an alert and assigned to the engineer. So there is a human intervention involved. But with the IPS, you solely rely on the software. There's no human intervention. So in a way, technically speaking, you need combination of both. Next, let's talk about SOC types. It's very important to understand, because while applying for the job or while working in a company, you will get a better idea. But organization can have an outsourced SOC that would be managed by the third party. Why organization do that? Because retaining SOC talent or security talent or cybersecurity talent, it's not easy. So most of the organization tend to outsource their entire security operation, entire their SOC, to the third party companies like TCS, Infosys, companies like Citrus, IBM, or Cisco, FortiGate, and everything, right? Our organization can also have an in-house SOC. This is usually done by the large-scale company or banks as well. Banks, maybe a large-scale bank who afraid to, you know, uh, outsource something outside of their organization. So in those situations, they build their entire security capability in house. All right. So I hope you got the idea about SOC.